The Zelda series has a lot of different enemies. As expected of a series that is 35 years old, it wouldn't make sense to reuse the same set of enemies every single game, and as such, the Zelda team has made a lot of fun, goofy, and weird enemies that we all come to love. Well, we love murdering them in combat, of course. But while I could make an entire video talking about my favorite Zelda enemy, it's this guy. I thought I'd talk about Breath of the Wild's enemies. Breath of the Wild has several variations of bokoblins, moblins, Lizalfos, Octoroks, Choo-Choos, Guardians, Lynels, and Keys. While I enjoyed fighting them at first, it quickly became a chore, as there wasn't any variation on how to fight, just in the numbers of hearts that they gave and took. But with the game's sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, coming up next spring, I thought we could go back to the series' past enemies and see if not only some could fit into a Breath of the Wild setting, but also enhance the story that Tears of the Kingdom might tell. But before we start, I ask that you leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this video and want to support me. Y'all are all pretty sick of me rambling by now, so without further ado, here are 5 different Zelda enemies that should return in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but Majora, we already have Zoras in Breath of the Wild. Trust me, I know, just let me explain. Zoras were first introduced in the series back in the beginning, in Nintendo's 1986 classic, The Legend of Zelda. Now, for all of you Sidon lovers wondering what the Zora looked like back then, don't worry, I got you. They look like this. Oh, sorry, that's just the official artwork. In-game, they looked like this. Yeah, kinda different from the Fishman that everybody loves. The Zora are pretty basic enemies in this game. They fire their little fireballs from the water, but other than that, they don't really do anything. What we want to talk about is a link to the past Zoras, because this is when we learn more about them as people. We know that they are actually intelligent, and that they can speak and understand Hylian. They can craft flippers and likely other things. No longer are the Zoras mindless enemies that attack anything they see. They are a tribe of people, a tribe that apparently hates Hylians. The humanization of Zoras furthered in Ocarina of Time. With a new, friendlier design, these Zoras are model citizens of Hyrule, and are quite central to the story in order to get the spiritual stone of water, and to enter the water temple. Okay, maybe they are the villains in that sense, but these Zoras are no longer hostile to the player, and they act like every other Hyrulean citizen, with the new hostile tribe being the Gerudo. However, my want for a more classic type of Zora never went away, and I feel like a lot of people shared my sentiment, because they've reappeared in several different 2D games. Heck, in A Link Between Worlds, the Zora have constructed a perfectly functioning society. However, I would love to see this type of Zora appear in a 3D game. The downfall timeline shows that 2 types of Zoras can exist at the same time, with the Link to the Past Zoras being the more hostile enemies of the river, whilst the Oracle games show the more friendly Zoras that everyone knows and loves. Both games take place within the Hero Legends lifetime, and considering Breath of the Wild's lackluster set of enemies, I felt a return of this type of enemy would be a great new addition to Tears of the Kingdom. A dark twist on a race we've already gotten familiar with and love. And there are several ways for Nintendo to do this. One example being that maybe a group of Zoras had been living underground, and the combination of cave water and a different diet made their evolution turn out differently. The tribe is now being hostile towards Hylians because they consider them outsiders. So yeah, I think adding these new sets of Zoras to the game's roster would provide a good twist on an all too familiar creature. Poes are recurring enemies throughout the Zelda series. They first appear in A Link to the Past. They are enemies that hang around the graveyard and don't serve much of a purpose other than being the creepy ghost enemies that take way too long to kill. The Poe's most memorable appearance is in Ocarina of Time. Every player will run into a Poe at least once in this game, as the 4 Poe sisters steal the 4 colored flames in the Forest Temple, the first temple after pulling the Master Sword. And the only way to complete this temple is to retrieve the 4 flames in order to grant access to the boss room. Additionally, there is a side quest in this game about capturing and selling Poe souls. What Poes are different than the average ghost or genie. Poes are spirits of concentrated hatred. They completely hate the world around them. Or at least that's what the Poe Hunter tells us about them. He could very well be lying just to get Link to sell him the Poe souls, but that's a topic for a different day. Breath of the Wild already had several instances where Link had to talk to the dead in the forms of King Rome and the Champion champions. There were even more instances of this planned for the game, but just didn't make it in for whatever reason. The first teaser for Tears of the Kingdom showed bright rocks that many thought to be luminous stones, a stone that is said to contain the souls of the dead. Ever since, many people, myself included, believe that the dead will play a larger role in this game. I'd love to have to fight off lost souls of Hylians and other races. People who are mad at Ganondorf for bringing forth the calamity, people who are mad at the Hyrulean royal family for not protecting them, and people who are mad at Link for being too late. Man, I just really like communing with the dead, don't I? Jokes aside, the Redeads were first introduced in 1998's Ocarina of Time, and were subsequently the subject of every kid's nightmares in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Tea for everyone.
Redeads can be found in 4 places around the map: the Shadow Temple, the bottom of the well, the royal family's tomb, and the adult version of Castletown. Regardless of where you first meet them, Redeads are a type of, well, undead enemy. They seem to be blind, but when they detect sound, they'll scream and slowly stalk toward you. If they manage to get close enough, they'll grab onto Link, placing their hands over Link's nose and mouth, suffocating him. What is interesting about Redeads, and what sets them apart from Poes in terms of an undead enemy, is the implications it has for the story, the war, the Sheikah, and the great royal family of Hyrule. Zoltek already did a 20-minute theory about the Redeads that goes into depth about what they are and why they exist. So if you're interested in Redeads, that video will be in the card up top for you to watch. But to summarize the main point, it's likely that the Sheikah made the Redeads under the orders of the royal family. Why they were created or for what purpose is unknown, but the possibilities are definitely unnerving. Now, you may be asking me, well, Majora, why is this important now? The Sheikah haven't had contact with the Hyrulean monarch in over 10,000 years, and the Hyrulean family fell 100 years ago. Well, I see your point. At the end of Breath of the Wild, Princess Zelda states that she wants to rebuild Hyrule to its former glory, but enemies like the Redeads can shed some light on some of the darker aspects of Hyrule's history. This can cause Zelda to reflect on the effects of the past, the morals of her family, and what it truly means to be the ruler of Hyrule, and what type of ruler she wants to be. And I think it would be a great continuation of our arc from Breath of the Wild. Finally, back into my comfort zone of enemies that come from A Link to the Past. The Ball and Chain Soldier first appeared in the beginning of A Link to the Past as I don't really know if this qualifies as a mini-boss because it's just there, but the Ball and Chain Soldier is responsible for teaching the player that they need all the dungeon items in order to beat the final obstacle. The Ball and Chain Soldier's job in this game is to guard Princess Zelda, but it would appear more times throughout the series, even making it into 3D titles. So why do I want this enemy in Tears of the Kingdom? Well, quite frankly, I want more ways to fight enemies. Most of Breath of the Wild's enemies create the illusion of multiple different weapons and fighting styles, but at the end of the day, they all fall under the same 3 weapon categories. 4 if you count boomerangs as their own weapons, but they basically function like a sword. At the end of the day, other than the bosses and mini-bosses, Breath of the Wild's enemies just feel repetitive to fight. The only ones that really stand out to me are the Lynels, for obvious reasons, and Lizalfos because some of them fight with boomerangs. So I would love to see a new type of enemy with a completely new weapon and attack style. Nintendo already proved that the Ball and Chain Soldier can exist in a 3D space, so I can't imagine it being that difficult to put it in Tears of the Kingdom. If you're a dedicated Zelda fan, you probably heard of the Dark Nuts, mysterious knights clad in heavy armor with a skilled way of the sword. Dark Nuts are found in the first Legend of Zelda. They are enemies that cannot be damaged from head-on. You must strike them from behind or the side. Or you could just place a bomb, but that's besides the point. Throughout the course of this series, the Dark Nuts have expanded from their basic design and are now known by fans as a force to be reckoned with, as they've shown up over the years, even taking up the role of mini-bosses at some point. Some people have even drawn up connections between Dark Nuts and the Hylian Knights, but regardless if that's true or not, similarly to how enemies like Redeads can cause Zelda to question her position as Hyrule's leader, Knight like enemies such as Darknuts, can bring up some pretty big moral questions for Link as well. While it's hinted in-game that Link was never able to question his path in one of the memories, it's revealed that in creating a champion, Link was only 13 when he first drawed the sword. Hyrule Warriors takes place in a different universe, so it does not count for the purposes of this video. But ever since he drew the sword, all eyes have been on him to save Hyrule. He was never able to question what he wanted to do with his life because he had to do the task that was given to him, and he's never been given the opportunity to think outside of that. So enemies like Darknuts can force Link to think about what it means to be a knight, how far he's willing to go to protect Zelda and the kingdom, and where does he have to draw the line? Does that line even exist? Why is he a knight? Will he still want to be a knight after he wins? While I can't confirm if any of these questions will be explored in Tears of the Kingdom, I do think it's an excellent opportunity that they have in front of them. So, yeah, those are 5 different enemies I'd like to see return in Tears of the Kingdom. It goes without saying that this is just a wish list. There's no way to prove that any of these enemies will be in the upcoming game. This is all just for fun. I do, however, have faith in Nintendo to bring in new enemies. After all, there are so many potential enemies that can inhabit the skies and cave systems of Hyrule. I know Nintendo is probably putting a lot of love and work into this game to make it not feel like DLC for Breath of the Wild, and I bet new enemies are probably already on this list. Well, you shouldn't raise your expectations too high. I am confident that Tears of the Kingdom is going to be a good game, and I'm interested to see the direction the devs take it in. That's all for today, folks. Thank you all so much for sticking through the entire video. It really means a lot. I'm Majora, and I'll see you guys later.